The movie begins with a man named Charlie. He's a reclusive, severely obese man who works as an online English teacher. Charlie is teaching a writing course, but he keeps his webcam off, ashamed of his appearance. His tone is passionate, reflecting his love for literature, yet there's an underlying sadness. A sudden health scare occurs when Charlie experiences chest pain and struggles to breathe. In the middle of this crisis, a knock at the door interrupts him. It's Thomas, a young missionary from the New Life Church, who had been going door to door. Seeing Charlie in distress, Thomas hesitates but ultimately steps in to assist him, reciting Bible verses and offering support. Charlie, though in pain, is more focused on Thomas reading an essay about Moby Dick aloud. After Thomas finishes reading the essay on Moby Dick, Charlie visibly relaxes. Thomas, curious and concerned, asks why Charlie made him read it. Charlie reveals he believed he was on the verge of dying and wanted to hear something meaningful in what he thought were his final moments. The essay, with its raw honesty, is a comfort to him. Shortly after, Liz, Charlie's closest friend and nurse, arrives. She immediately checks his condition, visibly alarmed by his worsening health. Liz confronts Charlie about not calling an ambulance during his health scare, but Charlie dismisses her concerns, citing his lack of funds for medical care. Liz grows more frustrated as she evaluates his condition, noting that his extreme obesity now makes it nearly impossible for him to perform basic tasks, like getting up to use the bathroom. Her medical expertise confirms what she feared: Charlie's heart and overall health are in a critical state. She warns him that without immediate medical attention, he likely won't survive the week. Thomas, still in the apartment, is deeply disturbed by Charlie's physical condition. Watching Charlie struggle further heightens the tension in the room. Liz becomes irritated with Thomas' lingering presence, seeing him as an outsider in a deeply personal situation, and demands he leave. Reluctantly, Thomas exits, but his concern for Charlie lingers. With Thomas gone, Liz's frustration boils over. She scolds Charlie, venting her own emotional pain. She accuses him of being selfish and inconsiderate, pointing out how watching his steady decline is breaking her heart. Liz cares deeply for Charlie, but his refusal to help himself, despite her pleas, leaves her feeling powerless. Charlie, in turn, acknowledges her pain but remains defiant, insisting he must focus on grading essays, as it's the only thing giving him purpose. The following morning, Charlie sits alone, confronting his deteriorating health. His curiosity leads him to search online about the effects of heart failure. The information horrifies him, detailing severe risks and the inevitability of his condition without intervention. The reality sinks in, leaving Charlie devastated. Instead of finding hope, he succumbs to despair, compulsively consuming candy and sugary treats as a temporary escape from his emotional pain and the hopelessness of his declining health. Later, a knock at the door interrupts his solitude. Charlie answers and is stunned to find his estranged teenage daughter, Ellie. Her initial reaction is a mix of embarrassment and discomfort as she takes in her father's physical state. Charlie, eager to reconnect, asks about her school life, attempting to foster a conversation. However, Ellie's bitterness quickly emerges, and she accuses him of abandoning her and her mother for a romantic relationship with one of his male students. Her words are sharp, revealing years of unresolved anger and resentment. As Ellie prepares to leave, Charlie panics and pleads for her to stay. He offers to pay her for her time, desperate to prolong their interaction. Skeptical but intrigued by his desperation, Ellie agrees under one condition: he must write essays for her. She then challenges him to prove his determination by demanding he walk over to her. Charlie struggles mightily, his physical limitations painfully evident, and Ellie watches in growing disgust. Unable to handle the situation, she storms out, leaving Charlie devastated. Shortly after, Liz arrives for his daily checkup. She quickly notes the strain on Charlie's body and the signs of his worsening health. As she checks his blood pressure and organizes his medications, Liz discovers Ellie's failed exam paper. Confronting him, she reminds Charlie of the restraining order his ex-wife had placed, forbidding him from contacting Ellie. Liz accuses him of being reckless and questions his judgment, arguing that reuniting with Ellie in his current condition may cause him more harm than good. Charlie defends his actions, explaining his motivation. He feels compelled to help Ellie before it's too late. He shows Liz Ellie's Facebook account, pointing to posts that he interprets as cries for help. Liz, while sympathetic, expresses her doubts, warning Charlie about the emotional toll this could take on both of them. Yet, Charlie remains resolute. He sees reconnecting with his daughter as his chance for redemption, a final effort to mend what he has broken before his time runs out. Liz's frustration grows, but beneath it is the concern of a friend watching someone she deeply cares for spiral toward the inevitable. Later, as Liz prepares to leave, she hands Charlie a sandwich to eat. Famished and distracted, Charlie begins eating it immediately, but he chokes on a piece. Panicked, Liz rushes to his aid, delivering forceful blows to his back until he manages to cough up the food and catch his breath. Liz is visibly shaken, and her frustration boils over. She scolds him tearfully, expressing how traumatizing it would be to watch him die in front of her. Feeling remorseful but still hungry, Charlie accepts the sandwich back and eats it more slowly. The next day, during an online teaching session, Charlie speaks with fervor about the importance of education, urging his students to engage with their assignments meaningfully. He hides his camera as usual, conscious of his appearance, but his enthusiasm for teaching shines through before he dismisses the class. Shortly after, Ellie arrives, still radiating the simmering frustration from their previous interactions. Charlie reviews her schoolwork and is disappointed with her lack of effort, remarking that she seems entirely disengaged. Ellie scoffs at his critique and complains about her poetry teacher, voicing her hatred for poetry as a whole. Sensing her underlying frustration, Charlie gently changes the subject, asking about her mother. Ellie reveals that her mom spends her time drinking, her tone dismissive but tinged with a subtle sadness. While they talk, Ellie notices a framed photo of Charlie with his late boyfriend, Alan, on a nearby shelf. Curiosity turns to bluntness as she demands to know why he allowed himself to become so obese. Charlie, after a moment of hesitation, admits that Alan's death left him in a dark place where food became his solace. His voice trembles with regret as he tries to explain the overwhelming grief that consumed him. Ellie listens but remains cold, showing little sympathy for his vulnerability. To break the tension, Charlie shifts gears and offers a deal. He'll write her essays for her, but she has to read them aloud to him. Though skeptical, Ellie agrees to the arrangement. A short time later, Thomas arrives, finding Ellie still in the apartment. She introduces herself as Charlie's daughter, which visibly surprises him. Explaining his purpose, Thomas says he's there to discuss the gospel with Charlie, but Ellie immediately launches into a tirade against religion. She mocks Thomas's earnestness, takes a photo of him on her phone, and sarcastically jokes that he might be her dad's new boyfriend. Before either man can respond, Ellie grabs her things and storms out, leaving an awkward silence in her wake. Later, Liz arrives with a wheelchair for Charlie, determined to make his mobility easier and perhaps instill some hope. She enters, surprised to find Thomas still there. Clearly annoyed, she tells Thomas to stay since she has questions for him. Liz then focuses on getting Charlie to try the wheelchair. With some effort, Charlie manages to sit in it, and it fits well. He even smiles, pleased with how it feels. Liz suggests testing the wheelchair's movement and asks Thomas to help remove the table to create space. Reluctantly, Thomas assists. Once the room is cleared, Liz takes Thomas outside for a candid talk. She demands to know why he keeps visiting Charlie. Thomas insists that their meeting wasn't a coincidence, describing it as God's plan. Liz, unimpressed, reveals her painful history with religion, detailing how her father, a deeply devout man, forced her brother Alan into a loveless marriage within the church. The pressure led Alan to deep despair, and a few weeks later, his body was found in the lake. Liz's voice cracks as she recalls the heartbreak and explains how this shaped her animosity toward the church. She warns Thomas to leave the missionary life behind and live for himself, suggesting he's wasting his youth. Thomas, however, holds firm, claiming he feels called to help others. Unfortunately, Charlie overhears the conversation. The mention of Alan's death and the strain religion placed on their lives visibly upsets him, but he remains quiet, lost in thought. Later, he wheels himself into Alan's old room, staring at keepsakes and photographs. His expression reveals the deep well of grief he still carries. The room is a sanctuary of memories and loss, where he allows himself to mourn in silence. The next day, Ellie arrives again. Charlie greets her warmly and asks about the poem she was tasked with writing. Ellie reluctantly begins to jot down her thoughts but quickly grows agitated. She lashes out, accusing Charlie of abandoning her and only now, 8 years later, attempting to reconnect. Her words are laced with anger and sadness as she blames him for leaving their family for another man. Charlie listens intently, his own emotions bubbling to the surface. He expresses his regret, explaining how much he wanted to see her over the years but was blocked at every turn by her mother. Ellie scoffs, her defense is still high, and tries to shift the conversation. She offers to make Charlie a sandwich, hiding her true intention, drugging him. Once Charlie falls unconscious, Ellie begins rifling through the apartment, her curiosity driving her actions. A knock at the door interrupts her. It's Thomas, who seems surprised to see Ellie there. Ellie lets him in. She pries into his motives for visiting her father, her skepticism apparent. When Thomas explains he's there to help Charlie spiritually, Ellie challenges him, questioning the sincerity of his faith. Manipulating the situation, she convinces him to smoke with her, snapping a photo mid-act. Ellie then confronts him with what she's discovered, that he isn't truly affiliated with the missionary. Pressured, Thomas confesses that he was expelled for stealing and that his visit to Charlie is part of his quest for redemption. Unbeknownst to Thomas, Ellie secretly records his confession. The tense atmosphere escalates when Liz and Mary, Charlie's ex-wife, arrive. Mary, seeing Charlie's state for the first time in years, is visibly shocked and appalled. Liz quickly assesses the situation, realizing Charlie has been drugged. As Charlie regains consciousness, Mary confronts him about Ellie's visits. She accuses him of paying their daughter to spend time with him, an accusation Liz finds laughable, knowing Charlie has no money. But Mary insists, citing Ellie's behavior as proof. Liz, deeply hurt, realizes Charlie does have funds he hasn't used to save himself. She storms out in tears, devastated by his apparent refusal to fight for his life. Ellie follows Liz, leaving Mary and Charlie alone. Mary unleashes years of pent-up frustration, criticizing Charlie for abandoning their family and letting his health decline to this point. Charlie defends himself, reiterating his desire to be part of Ellie's life despite Mary's efforts to keep them apart. The argument shifts to Ellie's troubled behavior. Mary admits she blames herself for not being a better mother, lamenting the rebellious and self-destructive path Ellie seems to be on. She shows Charlie a hurtful social media post Ellie made about him, calling her daughter a mess who doesn't care about anyone. Charlie, however, refuses to accept this, clinging to his belief that Ellie is still capable of being saved. Their conversation ends on a tense, bittersweet note, with both parents weighed down by regret and the shadow of their past choices. As Mary and Charlie stand in the tense aftermath of their confrontation, Charlie makes a heartfelt plea, confessing his terminal condition and imploring Mary to never give up on Ellie. His voice trembles as he emphasizes the importance of their daughter's future. Mary, overcome with emotion, reacts with a mix of frustration and heartbreak. She points out that Charlie's refusal to use his savings for treatment is selfish, especially when it could prolong his life. Charlie explains that the money is for Ellie, his last chance to give her something meaningful. Mary, overwhelmed by the weight of his words, struggles to respond. She angrily questions why he continues to deny himself help and, unable to process her emotions, leaves the apartment in tears. Charlie watches her go, his face a mix of sorrow and resignation. That night, alone in his dimly lit apartment, Charlie succumbs to despair. Surrounded by wrappers and remnants of his binge, he consumes food in a desperate act of self-destruction, seemingly punishing himself for his perceived failures. The silence is broken only by his labored breathing and the faint sounds of the outside world. The following day, Charlie faces his online class with a sense of finality. For the first time, he activates his webcam, allowing his students to see his true appearance. His face is etched with vulnerability as he explains the importance of honesty and self-expression. His students react with shock, some snapping photos and turning away, but Charlie remains resolute. He shares his regrets and encourages them to embrace authenticity before abruptly ending the session. Later, Ellie arrives, her presence shifting the emotional atmosphere. Charlie, visibly moved, apologizes with sincerity, acknowledging the pain he caused by leaving her and her mother. He admits his mistakes, explaining that his love for Alan blinded him to the consequences. Ellie listens, her walls beginning to crack. When Charlie breaks down, apologizing for her anger and unhappiness, she is visibly shaken. Charlie's health takes a sudden turn, and he clutches his chest, pleading for Ellie to read to him. In a moment of vulnerability, Ellie calls him daddy and begins to recite her poem. As her words fill the room, Charlie finds strength he thought was lost. With immense effort, he rises to his feet, his love for Ellie driving him forward. He takes slow, determined steps toward her, his face illuminated by pride and hope. But as he nears her, the exertion overwhelms him. Ellie's poem continues as Charlie collapses. Charlie's final moments are filled with the connection he longed for, a bittersweet resolution as he leaves Ellie with a glimmer of reconciliation and love amidst her grief. Make sure to like and subscribe for more notifications. Until next time. See you soon.